Welcome to A Photographer's Life, the channel that takes you behind the curtain into the world of professional architectural photography. Join us now for an episode with some of America's premier architectural photographers. Today's broadcast comes from a recent Zoom meeting of the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers. This discussion is led by AIAP Director Alan Blakely. We hope you enjoy the show. If you do, please let us know by liking this episode and subscribing to this channel. Now, on with the show.
So welcome everyone to October Zoom meeting for the AIAP. We're going to talk about post-production strategies and some things to optimize our workflow. And so I just want to welcome everyone. To get this started, I just want to mention that our podcast is on top of the heap as far as Asia goes. We're hoping that maybe we can break into some other markets, but
I'm big in Taipei.
Things are going well, but evidently we're really, really popular in Asia. So go figure. Just to kind of kick things off here, post-production is kind of a thing that we tend not to talk too much about, but it for me anyway, it's fully half of the equation and half of my time, at least, as far as where I spend my time with the job. And sometimes it's more than half. And so we wanted to kind of jump into what we're all doing and what's working and what's not working, and some things that we can do to optimize workflow and maybe find a better way to spend less time in post-production than we do now. And so I just wanted to mention at the outset here that I've kind of gone through a transition here in the last just couple weeks, even with buying a much faster computer, which was more than my first two cars, but that's made a huge difference. And I've also done some testing with software. Like a lot of you, I shoot a bracketed range and then blend those images together. And so I've been using several different softwares over the years, and I'm using a different software than I've been using for the last few years now. And so that's kind of where I am, and I'm happy to share those details. But I just wanted to kick it off and just ask, are there any kind of is there any kind of heartburn that anybody's feeling right now as far as post-production, and what can we do about it? Any thoughts, Norman?
Well, I think I don't, a lot of the younger, probably Evan for sure, a lot of people, I learned Photoshop just by or digital darkroom, all the apps, just by using them. I've never taken any classes, so I do everything the hard way, I'm sure. and we take a long time in post-production, but here, my business partner Mary Beth, she's a graphic artist. Like we'll do a blend of images. We'll shoot a bracket and we might blend some together, and I'll do any technical corrections on them, but then I hand it off to Mary Beth. Mary Beth is the reason our work looks nice, or I would say is color correct and beautiful, because she makes sure the colors are right and just does an amazing. I can't do what she does. And then she gives it back to me and I finish the image. So our post-production is slow, but I'm real happy with it. And I have not found a shorter way to do anything that we do. I've learned a few things that are quicker. I've actually used a little AI in cleaning some images up, which I've never done before. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm eager to hear what you guys do, because post-production here, we work on an image probably an hour and a half each before we're done.
Wow.
With it. Yeah.
Okay. I don't work anywhere near that long.
Yeah, we do. It's got to be perfect or it doesn't go
I'll
out.
just describe. I'll start off here and describe what I do. I shoot a bracketed range, and I use a system that I developed over 15 years ago that I used to teach called Smart Zone. And basically, what it is metering with a spot meter on site and finding out what the contrast range is of the scene that I'm trying to photograph, and then fitting that scene into, depending on the scene, either 3 or 5 or 7 or 9 or 12 exposures. And the more exposures that you shoot, then the softer the contrast is. And so with that system, then I can decide how many exposures I need to shoot in order to get a blended image that will compress that scene into something that is that I can capture in a single image. And so I shoot that way. And then I bring things back. And I used to, originally I used Photomatics to blend stuff with their Fusion module. Wasn't terribly thrilled with that result. And so I after that, I went to Aurora, which I know a lot of you have used. But then Luminar stopped supporting Aurora about 5 years ago. And they went to, they jumped off onto Luminar Neo, which was their kind of their flagship. But you couldn't do anything as far as blending images until about 2 months ago, when Luminar introduced an HDR merge module that is part of that. And that allows you to then to blend images in a batch. And batch processing for me, I should have said that already. Batch processing is huge, because I will come home from a shoot and I will take all the brackets, and I used to just dump them into Aurora and let it run overnight. But now I do it with for the last 2 weeks, I should say. I've done it with Luminar Neo and the HDR merge module on that, and dump them into that. And I've been very happy with the results with that. They're very natural looking, and there are some anomalies that you have to go back in and fix, but I get images that I can then take into Photoshop, and I may spend 15 minutes on an image if I need to, but I may only spend a minute on an image. And so that's the direction that I go with my post-production, with the exception of if there's something that needs kind of critical retouch, object replacement, or things like that, and I send those out to a third party. And I use a service that I've been using for a number of years. They're not the cheapest, but I know that, but they've got excellent customer relations, and I know that if I've got an issue with something, that I can say, no, that's not right, and it gets done immediately, not in a week. So that's kind of where I am. But after that, then after I go through the blending process and the Photoshop process, I use Topaz has those software plugins that are the denoise and the sharpening. I don't hardly ever use the sharpening, but I use the denoise on pretty much everything, because that has a sharpening a possibility as well with it that you can control. And so between that, I generally run everything through denoise after I get it through Photoshop, and that just kind of cleans it up and gives me just a lot smoother, not noticeably smoother. It doesn't look like it's been, there's some of the smoothing and denoise filters that are just terrible and make things look just really phony. But the Topaz, if you kind of pull back on the reins a little, it still works out really well. And that's the delivered image that I give my clients. So anyway, that's my workflow, and for what it's worth.
That's interesting. I if I'm blending, I'll use Easy HDR.
Mm-hmm.
I like that software. I never finish out in Easy HDR, but I'll do a layer stack in that, and you can control that. And then we bring it into Photoshop, and we finish them off. I've been using, since you and Barry have touted Topaz. I never heard of it before.
Mhm.
This last year, we've been using Topaz denoise on just about everything, need it or not, and
Mhm.
it does make a difference. I agree with that. But
Yeah.
I try to make my objective is to make our shots look like Fuji Astia 100F. That's what I'm going for, that look. And so that's, so that takes time to do that. But that's what we're looking at.
And I try to look like Ektachrome Plus. So
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I'm a Kodachrome man myself.
Really, Velvia was pretty good too. 50, Velvia
yeah.
50, amazing film. Yeah.
Well, good.
Well, I like the Topaz also, but they've changed their subscription model a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a little confusing, but hopefully they've settled down, and hopefully they won't keep increasing the pricing over like every 2 weeks. I'm exaggerating for the lawyers out there watching this. But yeah, all their software is great. The gigapixel is amazing if you need to take an
That's
older
amazing.
image and make it larger. Yeah.
I've never been happy with the HDR modules that I've used anyway. I have not used them in a while. What I use a lot in my editing are luminosity masks. I find those to be really, really helpful because you can, for example, if you've got a burned out light fixture, say, you can luminosity mask, a stop darker and a stop darker and a stop darker, and then you can just go in and paint out the part of the mask that you don't want. So you're just using it on that light fixture, and it takes a little bit of time, but it ends up looking really nice and really natural. And I shoot mostly commercial interiors. I think a lot of you guys do too. And the bane of my existence are burned out highlights, burned out light fixtures, and not so much burned out windows. Those can be dealt with more easily. But yeah, luminosity mask. I haven't used HDR in years because my problem with HDR was that it just sort of made the whole image. It would take down highlights I didn't want it to take down, and so yeah, I would recommend playing with luminosity mask if you haven't.
Well, I have a completely different workflow from any of this. So I do the bulk of my work ends up in Lightroom, particularly since Lightroom for the last 5 years or so has a way to change the parallel lines to make them parallel. So if there's anything wonky, and sometimes that's the only way you're going to get the shot for whatever reason, particularly in interiors. So I just do all my corrections in that. But then to blend images, I find the HDR in Lightroom has gotten better. It's not ideal. It won't handle big ranges, but it'll give me something decent to begin to work with. I usually use it when there's trees, plants waving or something for outside, because it does a better job of blending those. But then what I use is a program called the Infuse, which is in Lightroom. It's a plugin for, you know about this. And so what I can do is take, and I bracket also, of course. Even when I light, I'll bracket at least some. With Infuse, you can take a frame, a bracket, do whatever you want to it. You can change the color temperature. You can adjust the contrast, all kinds of things, and then blend it with another frame, and it'll keep all that information in there. So I can take, say, an interior where you've got big windows, but there's also interior lights that are different temperature because they're always a different temperature. I mean, that's life. Nobody's being evil about it. And
I think custodians are.
What's that?
Custodians have it in for us.
Yeah, there you go. And or even this, sometimes you get light that bounces off of a tree and it's got a green cast, or you've got strong light hitting some cabinets that create a strong cast or something in a residential or even non-residential. Anyway, I can blend each of those images, raw images, separately with all these adjustments, and then combine them and spit them out as a TIFF, a ProPhoto TIFF. And then I'll finish them in Photoshop. And I just that really works for me, and I just got a routine with that.
I use Bridge, which is the same engine. It just doesn't have all the cataloging and a bunch of other stuff that doesn't. I mean, that's fine for other people. It just doesn't apply to what I do. So I use Bridge.
Yeah, I'm old and crabby. I mean, I just like what I do.
I mean, one thing I do, we were talking about perspective corrections earlier. Somebody mentioned it, and maybe all you guys do this, but when I take my initial image, I don't normally perspective correct in Bridge unless I'm doing, a bunch of exteriors to prove to give to a client to just say, hey, which ones do you want me to work on? But for specific interiors that were, shot with a specific frame in mind, I take them into Photoshop. I do all my perspective correction in Photoshop, but I record that as an action. And that way, it doesn't matter how many frames I want to bring in, or I could bring in a frame next week, or I could bring in a frame 10 years from now and run that action again. And it's going to do exactly the same perspective correction on that image. And that way, I can, like I said, I can just do it over and over again. And that workflow just worked very well for me. And then I just save the actions with the job. The default in Photoshop is to save in the actions folder. But, if you look at the color of the hair on most of us, we've been through lots of versions of Photoshop. And I'm not sure what that actions folder would look like. So I just archive it with the job. And, there have been times that clients come back and said, oh, that shot from a few years ago, we want to do something else with it. And I can go back to if I go back to the raw files, I still can make the exact same correction. So I would recommend doing that.
Yeah, for like lens distortion and corrections, if you're not using Control Shift, if you get the software to a specific lens, like I've got some prime lenses, some older ones that I shoot interiors with, and they're not technically architectural lenses, but you get the lens correction software and you use that correction in Photoshop. It's phenomenal. I mean, it takes because if you're shooting an interior, sometimes using a Control Shift lens, that takes time, and sometimes it's just faster to shoot it and correct it in post, lens distortion in post. If you got the software, and I'm trying to think of the plugin that I subscribe to that has all the software in it. If somebody remembers it, just spit it out. But it's I have to open up the software and look at it. But it really helps. I mean, so if you're using Canon or Sony or Nikon, Minolta, whatever it is, whatever the lens is, there's a software that'll correct the distortion, and it's phenomenal.
I rely pretty heavily on Lightroom for my corrections as far as perspective, but I use tilt shift lenses for everything I shoot, with the exception of my drone. And the drone, I mean, I correct perspective with the drone. I don't let just because it's up in the air.
No tombstoning.
I don't let the buildings look like this. And so I do all that correction in Lightroom just because for me, that engine in Lightroom is really easy to use, and it's quick, and I can get through, say I've got 20 drone shots of a project that I've done. Those go really fast.
Alan, you just changed cameras. You got lens perspective, Control Shift lenses for your new Fuji?
I sold that Fuji system.
Did you? Okay, all right.
That's another story.
Okay. Are you back to Canon?
I'm using Canon. I'm using the 5 DSR. I have 2 of those bodies and my Canon lenses. I didn't play well with Fuji, so.
Okay, no, I get that. No,
it kind of made me crazy, and the people at Fuji don't like me now. So, yeah.
I have to say that when you talk about post-production, you have to think about the camera.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
It just starts there, and the 5 DSR, which is also what I use, because it doesn't have the anti-aliasing filter. I know some people that are in the cinematography world, and they just assumed I was using some 150 megapixel, phase one thing, and I realized that that sharpness that you get really makes a difference. And by the way, if you ever shoot portraits, it's a really terrible camera for portraits.
Yeah, no,
I've done it a few times.
Crappy lens on it.
Oh my God, it's way too sharp.
it's way too sharp. Yeah.
Yeah, so you spend a lot of time in post trying to bring it down.
Yeah, I shoot old cameras. I mean, we've got some recent new Sonys here. The mirrorless A7R4, whatever. I hate those cameras. We take them on a job. I hate them. I mean, the result is nice, the image is nice, but I can't stand looking through that bogus viewfinder. I want to see a mirror. I want a lens reflex camera. So my favorite cameras to shoot with are the old Sony 850s, and I still use them. I use them every day. Yeah. Um, Mary Beth and everybody else using the newer stuff. I don't care for it.
Well, just as just a quick aside on that, I didn't see any appreciable difference between shooting the Fuji, which is 102 megapixels, over my 5DSR, which is 50 megapixels. Those files look virtually the same to me, and so the Fuji was painful to use, and the Canon is not, and so that's why the Fuji went out the door. With all the stuff. I mean, Fuji even sent me a tilt shift lens. They've got a 30 millimeter. And that was the clincher for me. That was hard enough to use and painful enough to use that I said, oh, that's enough. I'm done. And so I sent it back with a thank you, and we were done.
Alan, you said that you shoot everything with tilt shifts, but I mean, I'm shooting the same boat you are. The widest tilt shift Canon has is a 17, right?
Yeah.
And I just find, so I've got the 11 to 24, which I think is a really wonderful lens, and I just find I end up needing to shoot wider than 17 a lot, and so I end up using the 11 to 24 and then correcting in post.
Yeah, and see, I don't hardly ever use the 17, but if I need to shoot a wider view than what, say, the 24 will give, or the 17, I always shoot it as a panorama. I will either stack it vertically or horizontally or both. So I always shoot multiple images because I still want to see, I still want to see the image through 24 millimeter eyes. But if I need to see more in the scene, then I will make that a panoramic situation and shoot multiple images that I will stitch together, because it's a different look. I mean, if I can shoot the same coverage, say with a wider lens, but it doesn't look the same. It's a different perspective of that same coverage.
And you've got to correct the barrel with an 11.
Yeah. So I will not bring the 17 out if I can do a stacked perspective, say with my 24. And so I will shoot verticals that with a 24 millimeter, say maybe it's 3 or 4 verticals that I can shoot just by shifting the lens, rather than get the 17 out and tilt it on side.
What tripod head are you using to shoot a stack?
I use it's the Manfrotto. I don't know what it is. It's a pricey one. It's not the Cube that a lot of people use.
Have you got the dial on it for so you can replicate each, like if you're shooting a series?
No, it doesn't have that capability. I have a bullseye level on the top of the plate. There's a horizontal plate that sits below the camera. There's a bullseye level on that. If I level that bullseye level out, and then I make sure that everything I shoot is leveled and plumb from there, then everything comes together just fine. I don't have any problems with perspective that way. I don't introduce any perspective that way. But yeah, I mean, generally I can't shoot wide enough. Like you say, Chris, there's a lot of things you can't shoot wide enough. And I shot an enormous home last week, and I had the 17 on, and I still had to stack things in order to get the views that I needed, because it had a 40-foot vault in the great room, and it was ridiculous. So anyway, that's my strategy.
My strategy is I never use a tilt shift lens anymore. I know this is heresy, but Yeah,
I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can be in this organization.
I have them. I have them. I've got the 24, which is a beautiful lens. There's just no,
Yeah.
it is a beautiful lens.
It is.
No, the lens I use the most is the 16 to 35. And I'm not, this is going to sound like a boast, but most of the time I can get it level by eye.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not dead on, I can fix that in Lightroom and it makes it look like I'm a genius. But yeah, I found it didn't help me very much. And maybe it's just I've become so used to using software to correct things, because you will have to correct. But that lens in particular, the latest version of the 16 to 35 is just super sharp, edge to edge. There's just nothing, no weirdness about it at all, other than the obvious, if you tilt it, you're going to have some.
Yeah. And whatever distortion there is in that lens, the Lightroom profile for it corrects it out beautifully. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, we've got talking about sharp lenses. We've just got a Sony G series 20 millimeter lens that it's almost too sharp. You can't shoot people or anything with it because there's so many. I mean, it's just ugly. But it's you can't use any sharpening on it at all. It's that scary sharp.
Yeah, I think this is something that's different in the last 15 or 20 years, is that all the major manufacturers make these really, really good lenses. I mean, Fuji Glass, Sony, Nikon, Canon, they're just amazing.
Yeah. My favorite glass to use is for architectural is a 20 millimeter Minolta lens. It's got a character to it. It's not crazy sharp. But it's sharp on the corners. It's rectilinear. I've got the profile for it, so I correct the distortion in post. And to me, it looks like film. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I like it, and it makes my images pop, And I just love it. I like the old Minolta glass.
Wow, I'm looking that up right now.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a real good one.
Wow, they're not terribly expensive.
No, you can get them for like 50
there's
bucks.
a lot of good glass out there.
Yeah.
I used to
like $50. Yeah.
Yeah. The 35 millimeter Nikon PC lens, I still use.
Yeah.
You got an adapter for that?
I've got an adapter for my Canon. Yeah. And I know that's illegal in some states, but it's a great lens.
It is a good lens. Yeah.
It's manual, and you have to close the aperture down manually on it. But I've had that lens for 40 years, and it still fits the bill. But
yeah. I like the character of the older glass.
Yeah.
Cinematographers do too, which has nothing to do with architecture particularly, but they have a problem with sometimes the sensors being so good now that they want to add some character and soften things up at the same time, and they'll use older glass or rehoused older glass from them.
Well, and before we came online here, Norman and I were talking about headshots, and you kind of touched on this again, but shooting people with these big sensors and everything, and headshots are becoming, well, always have been, but are for a lot of us a nice add-on for our clients and a really nice revenue stream if we do headshots. But you got to use glass that's not as sharp as your architecture glass in order to do that. And for me, when I was doing it, I was using an old Canon Zoom, wide open, and I'd had that lens for over 30 years. And that was, people would say, what lens are you using? I get that from other photographers. And I was embarrassed to tell them what it was, because it was, $125 lens new.
Yeah.
But
I can be more embarrassing than that, Alan. I've got a Camaro, a Kamero 85 millimeter 1.2 manual lens that I shoot portraits with, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's just phenomenal. And I think you can get it on eBay for like $10.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at historically, the portraits that we remember in our head as the great portraits from history, they're not terribly sharp, with the exception of Yusuf Karsh.
Yeah.
But otherwise, not all that sharp.
Yeah.
So that was an aside. Sorry, we took it.
Yeah, sorry, a little tangent there. It's my fault.
Well, but that's part of, I think, the architectural. I think people are surprised to find out that I shoot more than just architecture, because it's predominantly what I do, what most of us do, I imagine. But yeah, the headshots can be very nice, income stream, and it's a whole other brain you have to kind of put on. But once you are set up and you get your seamless up and some strobes, boom, 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 and your post is fast, because it involves so much less work than that. So yeah, what you really need then is people skills. That's the real key to doing headshots, and that is not post-production.
Yeah.
Had to mention the people skills, huh?
Well, sorry.
That's true though, because I do headshots as an add-on too. Eventually all your architecture clients say, "Oh, do you do headshots?" So that is, maybe 20% of my business. But I don't, if I'm called in to do like, oh, well, we've got, people in our office, shoot them, and then every 6 months you come in and you update it. But I don't want other people in the room when I'm shooting someone, because I only have one set of jokes and one bit of banter. And that's what I use to put people at ease. And if, the three people are lined up right there, they're hearing everything I'm saying. And
plus they'll look at them. The subjects will look around. They'll see the people.
Yeah.
Right.
They'll tell them what to do, and they'll say, "Oh, tilt your head this way." And I want to just say, "Shut the F up and get out of this." It's not your job to tell them to tilt their head.
So, I mean, I think part of the whole people skills challenge when you're doing headshots is just to get isolated with the person.
Absolutely.
So that you can have that kind of interaction. You only have a few minutes with them. So,
yeah. This is why Barry's got that big shirt on the back. It says director.
Yeah.
Well, I do have a FAA. I have a vest, orange vest that I wear when I'm shooting the drone, and it has big letters on the back, FAA certified,
I bought one of those.
Yeah, that's right. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helps.
It's a good idea.
It's a huge thing for me anyway, because people don't bother me anymore.
Oh,
I don't have everybody come up and say, "Yeah, I've got a DJI drone," and I'm trying to fly in between wires.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was great. And Barry put me onto that on Amazon, and it's a great vest. I was wearing a vest already, but this one has that copy on the back of it, which is important. And then it's got a nice pocket. I don't know if yours has that, a clear pocket that I printed a copy of my certificate, my 107 certificate, and stuck in there, and as well as the lanyard I wear around my neck.
Yeah, I have to do that. Yeah, I wear my NPPA and ASMP lanyard. The press pass things, but they're meaningless, because real press passes are one event. But I put that stuff on so it looks good. And I've got a big ugly floppy hat that I wear. Skin cancer and all that. And I look a little like somebody who works, like if I'm shooting a park, I look like somebody who works at the park.
Yeah, these are great to
have. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I've got one vest that says press on the back of it.
Yeah.
But I got detained by the police in Michigan this past summer, so that's when I changed my vest to the FAA ones.
Yeah.
As far as outside sources for workflow, is anybody using somebody outside for post-production? Is that a thing for anybody here?
I get asked a lot of people, that want to offer to do our work, and I'm too fussy.
Yeah, it's half the creative process. There are the things you plan to do in post, and then there are the surreptitious things you go, oh wow, wait, if I did this over here, I can make this image better. And then there are also the, oh crap, I completely screwed that up when I was shooting. I need to fix it. So, you farm that stuff out to somebody else, and they don't have the eye. They don't know, they weren't there when you were shooting it. They don't know who the client is. My clients are buying me, and that's all the way through. So yeah, I'd love to be able to farm it out, and I did many, many, many years ago. I had someone doing my post work, but it didn't save me that much time because I'd have to prep everything to send them to them and tell them the instructions I wanted. And then when it came back, I had to tweak it and work on it. And so, instead of an hour an image, I was maybe spending half an hour an image, but it was a lot of time spent doing catch up on what did they do, what did they not do. So I keep it all in house. I feel like editing an architectural photo requires the attention to detail and the tedium that it takes to build the damn place.
Mhm.
And if you don't have that kind of mindset of being very, very detail oriented, this isn't the part of the business for you. I mean, there are lots of parts of the business that'll suit your sort of brain structure, but yeah, this requires, a huge attention to detail. If you walk into a house and the cut lines on the paint are crooked, or the trim is around the doors are crooked, or the light switches are all, crooked and wonky, you're going to go, wow, that's what was the quality of the build here? It requires the same kind of level of dedication to detail to shoot it as it does to build it.
Well, and then you have to fix those crooked things when you're photographing them.
Yeah, you do.
I just take them out of the scene.
You got to make it look
have-
like they
Yeah.
knew what they were doing.
Being the biggest novice in the group here, I clean up the picture as best I can in post-production. But then if there's a telephone pole and wires going through a lot of detail, I do hire that out to, every day, you get somebody that wants to help you with your editing. Well, through all that, I've found two that are pretty decent. And, I just get it the way I want it. But then I let somebody like that take out the telephone pole and the wires going through the middle of the building.
Yeah, no, I do that
It works pretty well.
myself. It's therapeutic to me, so I just do it myself.
Yeah.
That's the easy part of the edit.
Well, I think it's become easier to do that sort of thing now in Photoshop. A lot of us are worried about AI, but when you get out that healing brush tool to get out those wires, that's all AI. And I think it's gotten so much better.
I'm amazed at what I throw at the remove tool. You have an exit sign up there, and there's a part of a ceiling grid behind it and part of a wall behind it, and there's some shadow as the wall goes up to the ceiling. And the remove tool isn't 100%, but boy, it's like 98%. I've thrown stuff at that I thought this will never ever work, and boom, it's fine.
I need to ask you guys something. If you do that stuff yourself with like the healing tool, like if you were to, and Mary Beth just brought this to my attention, if you pull up something, if you use AI to remove something, when you post an image on Facebook or Instagram, it says on the image or in somewhere in the hashtag, what is that, Mary? It says powered by AI. It's actually in the metadata of the image. And if you do it yourself with like the patch tool, you don't get that. And so I don't know that I mean, that bothers me a little bit because, if I'm spending the time taking something out, I don't like that my image, that a client would see that and say, oh, well, this image looks like this because he used AI.
Yeah.
So if I use it, it's very, very little.
I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen that either, but I expect we're going to see more of it because the big companies are so worried now, as they should be. But, photography, what's the famous line from Avedon? All photos are accurate and none of them tell the truth. I mean, that's the deal. So, it's not AI, it's just another tool to create whatever illusion you're trying to do. I mean, I think part of our job is to make mediocre and even occasionally ugly faces look great. That they don't really have a relationship to reality, except maybe for 20 minutes after the sun goes down. and the ambient light inside that. Then oh wow, how beautiful! And then in broad daylight, the building looks, oh, this is not good.
Mm.
Or it's boring. It's just
So-
ordinary, you know.
Can I just share something with you? Thank you, Mary.
On the location, you know where it says the city on Instagram, like if you put the location information. On one of our posts, like instead of just saying Highland Park, Illinois, it swaps back and forth and it'll say AI info. And so I tapped on it. Hold on. Now I lost it. AI info. View AI info. And what it says is that generative AI may have been used to create or edit content in this post.
Okay.
So
That's
if you've
it.
used generative fill, if you used any kind of that, some of those things like in Photoshop,
Yeah.
it can somehow detect it, and then it just puts in there that AI may have been used.
Yeah. I don't like that. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can sidestep that by editing your metadata or saving it as a different image name or something like that.
You would think.
You would think. I tried that multiple times. I intentionally used it. I even saved it off. Like I saved it in, what are we on, 26 point something here? I went into Photoshop 6 on my Power Mac and resaved it, trying to do it, and it's still on there.
There's gotta be a way to go.
So, but I don't think I like that. So I've been trying not to use it at all.
That's
Yeah.
got to be in the metadata or EXIF data somewhere on there.
Yeah, I can't find it. I don't see
Well,
it.
the companies are trying to embed metadata you can't get rid of because of nefarious uses, not architectural uses. It's mostly for journalism, photojournalism. So
Yeah.
it's gonna become very difficult, not impossible, to do it. And Adobe and the camera manufacturers and everybody's just getting together to try and make it detectable. So I think it might be better to figure out ways to explain to customers that how it's not a bad thing. I mean, here's the analogy I'll use. When I was in my previous life and I was building and designing kitchens, I did a kitchen for a guy and he loved it and it was great. And I drew it all by hand. And then the next thing he asked me to do, I used a program because boy, it was faster and easier and more accurate. And I can't letter worth squat. So you could actually read what I wrote. And I handed him a bill and he said, "Why should I pay you? The computer did all the work." So
Wow.
now, I mean, this is a gross exaggeration of how things go, but you know, we can produce the results we can produce because of our taste and our eye. It's not because of the software.
Mhm.
And so, you know, we're just gonna. That's a new world. It's a new kind of reaction.
Yeah.
I think that's one reason, frankly, we still get hired because renderings have become so photorealistic, but they still don't look as good as a decent photograph by and
Yeah.
large.
True.
Yeah.
That's true.
Anyway, that's the end of my speech along those lines.
No, it was a good one. I liked it. Nefarious. I got to write that word down and use it more.
Well,
Nefarious. Like
you know,
that.
even when I post this video next week, YouTube is going to ask whether or not there's any AI content in it,
Yeah.
and that will show up too. So
Yeah. Well, the lawyers. I mean, this is honestly part of it. Is the lawyers everybody's worried about getting sued for,
mhm.
you know, one thing and another, and it's just we're going to have to deal with it. And you know, I'm really 25 years old, but I thought it would make me look. I'd get paid better if I looked like an old guy. So I just had AI
It's
do
working. Yeah.
this.
Jokes.
Forgive me.
That's funny.
I'm tired of customers telling me, "Well, you know how much better you'd look if you would just color your hair."
You have hair.
I'm just happy to have hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Any other tangent we ought to talk about on this process, this subject of workflow and those kinds of things? Is there something we've missed that anybody wanted to bring up?
Well, one thing that
Norman, sorry.
Well, one thing I do is I never use the original file. I convert everything to DNG, and I find DNGs are rock solid, but also in terms of metadata purposes, the amount of metadata you can throw into a DNG. I used to put entire contracts into the metadata, the IPTC.
Okay.
And so it's so super consistent. DNGs will always be available. You still find companies that are going out of business and their proprietary raw files don't open anymore. You need special software for it. So, and they're slightly smaller, but it doesn't make any difference anymore. Actually, the cost of storage has gone way down. And I think one thing that is different is I'm starting to use solid state drives a little bit more because they've gotten cheaper, but all my archives are still on spinning drives because I mean, you can, for $100, you can get a 6 or 8 terabyte drive.
Yeah.
So you have multiple of those. And I think having copies of copies and copies is really critical to my workflow because every now and then, if nothing else, I have to go back because I screwed up or lost something and I can dig it out and find it.
And I agree with that. I mean, it's just here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 6, and I've got 2 on the computer. 8 RAID drives running, and they're all about 8 terabytes each.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, I've got 1 solid or 2 solid state drives. I think this computer's got a solid state drive in it. But I like the solid state drives.
Oh, they're really fast. They're cheap, but they're not cheap. They're cheaper, but they're not they're not good enough for archival work, and they fail also. So you always have to have copies. But the other thing is having software that does the checksums, because none of that copying is really worth anything unless it's accurate. So Lightroom, I'm sorry, Norman, has great.
I hate Lightroom.
It has great checksums, but because I've started doing video, I started getting really nervous about those clips. And so I found a software called ShotPut Pro, which is really easy to use, super easy to use. And it's something that they use on big movies. There's several kinds of software they use that it's ShotPut Pro, one word. And so you get these 2 windows, like copy from and copy to. You can slide a whole folder in there, and man, it's just great. So it's fast. It really has eased my mind now about making sure things don't go terribly, terribly bad.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to bring up as far as workflow is also the archiving part of things.
Oh, it's critical.
And having things with redundancy so that, especially if you have infringement issues down the line and you need to kind of verify things or give supporting material to an attorney or things like that. But also if your customers, which they always do, they lose your stuff, and then they'll call you, years down the line and say, can you send me this? And so being able to find it quickly and easily and have it there completely is hugely important. So that redundancy with,
I have a question about deliverables. The nomenclature, the DPI, the number of pixels on the longest side, all that sort of thing, the format, everything. Do you customize that for every client, do unto the client as the client wants to be done unto? Or do you have your way of doing it and say, this is the best way for you, so this is what you're getting?
I send everything the same way to everybody.
Yeah.
They get a TIFF and they get a JPEG, and they're both at full resolution. Well, for my Canon, it's like 8,600 pixels on the long side, and at 300 DPI is what I send it. So I don't reduce the size of the file. I send them a TIFF file that's enormous, and I do use LZW compression on it, but I send them a full resolution TIFF file, and then I send them, like a level 6 or level 8 JPEG that they can then easily open. The level 6 tends to work out best for them at posting it on social media and things like that, but it's still the same size. I don't reduce the size pixel wise of an image ever.
What I do, Glenn, is I do this basically the same thing, but my TIFF files are 360 PPI, And when I deliver a JPEG, it's a 12, but it's a 144 because that's the screen resolution now. And that's what most of them are used for. So and I make that differentiation in the file. I'll say the TIFF files for, print advertising, and the JPEG is for internet use.
Well, you can even go a little farther than that, which is, I mean, what I do is I have using Lightroom. When I
You may
export,
as well get a sponsorship for that.
you can do this in other software too. I only deliver JPEGs unless somebody wants something else, and
Of course.
I'm lazy. And but what you can do is do an export that appends the word web or print onto the file. It's the same, it doesn't change the file name, it just adds web or print. And I started doing that because I had clients that kept saying, well, this doesn't look good on the web, because they're loading Adobe 98 TIFFs. And it takes forever to load it. Well, yeah. So so rather than give them the explanation, you should only put a JPEG on the web. I just started doing that, and it's so easy to do. You got to do an export anyway.
Mhm.
And in addition to that, depending on the client, I'll even do what I call an Insta one, which puts it in a square canvas. Really easy to do, both in Photoshop, but in Lightroom, you use a print module. We don't need to talk about that, but it's 180 by 180, which is what Lightroom wants.
Mhm.
And that way, there's no distortion. They don't have to worry about it. And it's easy. It's so fast and easy for me. And anything that makes it easier for the client makes it more likely they'll hire me again.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thought process for that.
Do you, in the nomenclature, do you just put, like photo number 1, number 2, number 3, or do you put in like
Oh, it's the file name.
XYZ insurance exterior?
No, it's the file name. I just use the same file name for everything. It's the only way. If they, like Alan was saying, if they come back to me 5 years later and they say we want this photo, the file name is there. It's also legally nice to have that copied in my own archive in case there's an infringement or a problem or any kind of confusion.
Yeah, I think Glenn brings up an important thing and that we didn't talk about, and that's file naming.
Yeah.
And what I've kind of been schooled in what I should and shouldn't do, having gotten into a lot of infringement situations. And so the export function of Lightroom is really important to me in that I can put the name of the client or the project as a prefix, and then I have the file name, which I never change. That file name never gets changed that comes out of my camera. And then a suffix on there is my name. And so, the file is, say it's, Deer Valley Resort, and then the file name, and then it's Alan Blakely is the suffix .tiff. And so when that goes out, and if that gets infringed, it's a slam dunk to find out where that file came from, and to and to support the fact that it's mine. And there will be a lot that strip that name out and rename it and things like that. But for me, anyway, being able to find files, I never change the name of a file when it comes out of the camera. So that number sequence is always.
I change all mine so I can find them. I use a job number of if I did one today and it was my 4th job of October, it would be 24_10 4. And anyway, so I know approximately the date, anything I'm looking up, and that anyway, it just helps me to do it that way.
Yeah,
Change
the dates are always embedded in your images anyway.
Yeah.
And I did various kinds of things early on, but I'm just saying from having shot digital now for 25 years that's the format that seems to work best for me. And
so you're finding that changing the name and putting the client name and your name onto the file has been helping with infringements.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. I may have to rethink my process
Yeah,
here.
our numbers are, I mean, like in a Norman Sizemore, it's NS and it's the actual production number of the, since the day we started with digital. Prior to that, it was the film roll number, but
Yeah.
so ours are all sequential. So I can look at a number and I can tell you what year it was shot just by the number.
Hmm.
But I like the idea of adding your name to it. I mean, I know I have the metadata, but I don't have it in the file name itself.
Yeah, I've done that in the last, well, I don't know, probably 8 years, I guess, and putting the project name and my name in the file name,
Mhm.
and it helps people find me when they see an image. Somebody else has got an image that they're using, and if somebody hands off an image, if somebody's got any ethical backbone, they'll contact me. And they'll be able to know that, oh, Alan Blakely, I'm easy to find. But that works out really well too. And it does make for a stronger case in infringements if that number's not a random number and it's actually got your name on that original file.
And do you adhere to the 31 character limit on the
I
file
do
name?
not.
Ah,
No, I don't.
What is that? I've never heard of that. The 31.
oh well. This is something that was started by Microsoft in the
Yeah, you have to flash back to Windows.
yeah,
No one here
hundreds
is
of
using a
years
PC, right?
yeah, hundreds of years ago when the internet was just a baby, or electronics. Anyway, in theory is supposed to be the biggest file name character number that you should ever have. But I've been wondering whether that was still true because it would be really convenient to be able to make longer file names exactly for the reason that Alan was.
I don't think that, I don't think mine may ever be that long, more than 31 characters,
Okay.
honestly. Probably not, even if I because I always abbreviate the project name, and up until just recently, it's just been my last name that I've added as a suffix on the file names. And so, yeah, I probably am well within that 31 character limit. But that is an easy thing. I mean, if you're trying to identify, is this my photograph, or somebody else is trying to identify it, it's got your name on it in the project. It's pretty simple.
I like that.
I do too.
Yeah. Anything else we ought to talk about before we wrap this?
I did want to mention one thing as encouragement, and that is I just got a really nice job over in Clearwater. I'm in Jacksonville area.
Yeah.
And the guy needed an architectural photographer. So he went online, architectural photography, and he found AIAP right away and went to AIAP. And the job was in Clearwater. So he went to Florida, and he said he looked at 5 websites. He liked mine, and he was ready to hire me.
That's great.
And I got the job, and of all things, it was the Worldwide Worship Center for Scientology. Who knew that was even in Clearwater? But it's a huge building, and I got to do the whole outside and the whole inside, and
I think
the
it's their
hotel
headquarters.
next door that's part of it.
Yeah.
So, and it was all through. If I was, and I got paid, yes, very nice.
Don't do it in trade.
And also, no one invited me to go up in the rocket.
That's also important.
But I did get a tour of the whole building. It is really nice architecture, but I'm just saying, I absolutely got the job because of AIAP.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear all that bandwidth is worth something. So that's great. Congratulations on that, Glenn. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's wrap it up there. As always, we'll after we close recording, we'll stay on here for a little while if anybody wants to chat. And I appreciate everybody's contributions. This for anybody watching this was a wealth of information today. Stuff that would take anybody individually years and years to figure out. And so thanks to all of you for sharing, and look forward to seeing you next time. I will mention that I did get a coupon code and a discount code for Luminar, Neo. I think I got one for Topaz as well. I'll send that out after this meeting if anybody's interested. They're not a sponsor. but they did send me independent of this conversation, some discount codes to send to the membership. So I'll be doing that. But thank you again. I hope everyone has a great weekend and a good month. And if you've got anything we need to talk about next month that you'd like to see come up as a topic, please let me know. Until then, thanks,
Right.
and we'll talk to you soon.
This has been another episode of A Photographer's Life. If you've enjoyed this program, please let us know by liking this episode and subscribing to this channel. A Photographer's Life is brought to you by the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers. This episode is copyrighted and may not be used in full or in part without the written permission of the AIAP. Please join us again soon for another inside look at the world of professional architectural photography.